That's why Hemet Law, we charge an average of, depending on the attorney, somewhere between 25 and 47% above market, because our brand presence is so strong and people come to us because they trust us. Welcome back to Firm Factor, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic week. I'm John Sosha. Rebecca's name is Rebecca, and we are back with some the show where we don't have a scripted intro yet. We're working on that. And we are back. We're going to be covering some legal and marketing misconceptions today, because we wanted to talk to our audience a little bit more about what people may get wrong, what they may get missing from the relationship with their agency or the operations of their practice. Rebecca, how you feeling? What are you excited for? Tell me all about it.
I'm feeling great today, actually. Yeah, had a really good day so far, and this is always an interesting topic to cover because, of course, a part of my job and my team's job is to talk to law firms who maybe come in with some real preconceived ideas about what they need to do to move the needle. They have ideas based on either maybe historic marketing campaigns or ideas that they have from doing a little bit of Googling or someone has told them, and they come to us maybe with expectations about what is going to be effective for them. So it's really interesting today to be able to go through a few of those and say whether it's going to be useful or not.
Rebecca, let's kick us off with a common misconception you see from your clients or that law firm owners should know about. Like, where do we start here?
Well, I mean, there's a few big ones, but one that I'm going to start off with, actually, because it's come up today from a client, so it felt very topical, is the idea that you need to be on every social media platform, that you have to reach every client. So we sometimes will have clients that are like, right, well, I'm going to need an Instagram identity, I'm going to need to be on Twitter, I'm going to need to be on LinkedIn, I'm going to need to be on TikTok. I don't agree with that. So I think, that there are definitely ways to reach clients on those mediums, and they can be very beneficial. But I would say, especially if you have low resources and you want to actually make an impact, we would always suggest picking just one or two platforms that your clients actually use. So your ideal client profile, your ICP, have a think about where they're going to be, and that's where I would say to focus your efforts. So be consistent, put out interesting content on one or two platforms rather than trying to split your efforts across all of those different platforms, which may not be relevant to your clients.
So first, I want to ask, for what is this just for client acquisition? Is that the nuance of this individual case type?
No, great question. Client acquisition is part of it. I would say brand awareness is the other part of it. So we would put out stories or content on platforms regularly, and part of that is for SEO value. Part of it is for just brand awareness in general, and the other part is client acquisition. But as a general rule, the client acquisition is slow burn client acquisition. So we're not talking about ads. We're talking about building up awareness so that people will actually engage with your website and perhaps getting into your lead funnel through having seen a piece of content and engaging with that.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. So
go for it.
So like the use case here is for low resource law firms who just want to get more of a video presence, which we've said before is crucial in this modern era and becoming. I know people are probably getting really tired of us harping on about this, but like this is still the first mover era where the majority of value is yet to be grabbed from the table by the market. So that's why we're talking about it so much. We're trying to get you ahead of the curve. For firms with low resource, the way my team approaches social media is shots on goal. And there are tools like Metricool. We use Metricool for our social media distribution platform. You can easily create an account and get one piece of content out on 9 different social media channels easily, right? It's very accessible. It's from one central planner. You can schedule them in advance. It's very economical. Now, if the question is, should you focus your strategy on one or two platforms, I would agree with that statement.
Yes.
But if the question is, should you appear at all on those platforms, I think there's very little reason not to. So that would be my nuance. Like I'm a huge social media guy, and like we put out stuff on LinkedIn, we put out stuff on Threads, on X, on all the other godforsaken platforms. But TikTok, Instagram, the Meta suite, Facebook are like the big three, right? If you're on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, you're probably going to be fine. Facebook is now on average older, TikTok is on average younger, and then Instagram falls somewhere in the middle. All three of those platforms behave very differently. Like Reels, Shorts. I actually think that YouTube Shorts is a really, really underrated. The algorithm for YouTube Shorts is almost, if not in some ways, better than the TikTok algorithm at locating your ideal clients. Now, you may ask, how do I target my ideal clients? Well, the content is the targeting. Algorithms, this is interest media. Instead of, it almost doesn't matter how many followers you have. I have videos doing better right now than, like, on my personal TikTok than multi-million follower TikTok accounts, because like people are just, it no longer matters how many followers you have. You aren't rewarded for followers like you were in 2012 era Instagram. So my thought is, like, you don't need to worry about your hashtag strategy by and large. You don't need to worry about when you post by and large. The algorithms, it's a blessing. They are now so good. No matter what content you put out, it will find the people who are interested in it. So just talk about your area of expertise.
I mean, I would agree that there is some advantage of having a presence across those different platforms. And you're right about the, the different age demographics across those big three. The challenge, I would say, can happen with law firms, and especially with maybe law firms that have sort of some older partners in, is that putting something out authentically on TikTok is probably going to be challenging for them if they are trying to spread themselves thinly. I would recommend that they put themselves where they feel it is most brand appropriate. So I agree, there are some great tools. Metrical is fantastic. There are some tools out there, but it still requires a certain amount of feeling comfortable with technology. Of course, they can use companies like LegalRev. They can use other companies to help them. Just throw that in there. They can,
shameless plug, guys.
Yeah, shameless plug. They can, you can use marketers to help you. So you can use external agencies to help you with those things if you don't feel comfortable. But if you are in a position where you are resource low, I think putting out regular content that feels brand appropriate on a couple of platforms you feel comfortable with is better than trying to just throw out a few things across the different platforms. But I don't necessarily disagree with you. I think also I wanted to just jump on your point about using YouTube. Absolutely the best way to go. Even when you're putting videos and embedding them on your site, the best way to do it is to try and link to YouTube if you can, because it's essentially the second largest search engine on the internet. There's so many benefits to having it on YouTube, and the algorithms on YouTube are just, streets ahead of lots of other things. So I think it's really, if you are going to be putting out video content, you might as well leverage the behemoth that is YouTube and take the advantages of that for SEO reasons.
You don't need to have like the name of your law firm be your social media handle. Like Hemet Law has like 5 or 6 different social media accounts across platforms, and only one of them has Hemet in it. Like the rest is our street interview series, Law on the Street. We've got Further Study, our YouTube channel about legal education. Each of those that YouTube channel has its own TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, independent from the law firm brand. We put Hemet Law in the video descriptions, but like there is no reason that it's a horizontal strategy, right? If you have different types of engagement you want on different projects, then just create your own social media account. You can manage 5 or 6 different brand profiles and trademark them under your larger law firm, all from one place. You don't need to try and appeal to every audience all at once.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, I would say if you are just going to have one, then definitely try and use your name if you can. That is advantageous.
Recommended for most.
But that's absolutely correct. There are other ways to be able to make sure that people associate with your brand, even if you have a different name for your social media channel.
This podcast is brought to you by LegalRev. We don't just market law firms, we grow them. With smart SEO, Google Ads, and AI-ready strategies, we make sure your next client finds you first. If you're ready to win online, start at LegalRev.com.
Rebecca, what's the next misconception we should share with the audience? What pearls of wisdom?
Pearls of wisdom. Well, the next one, and this is particularly topical at the moment and relates to some of our conversations previously, is that SEO is all about keywords. This is something which was true It was very much, was the case, but this is completely moved. So it used to be that a big part of the strategy that we had and that SEOs had was to find the best keywords. So, for example, divorce lawyer near me. And you wanted to make sure that you had that within your content. I won't say as much as possible because you were still, there was a term called keyword stuffing, which you can be penalized for if you just try to shove it in wherever. So it still had to fit naturally within your text. But you wanted to make sure that you had keywords and adjacent keywords that were going to be searched for. Now, the reason
family law, divorce lawyer, Seattle
exactly,
sort of thing. Yeah.
Exactly that. Now, there is still some benefit to them. It hasn't completely gone. However, because the way that people are searching has changed, those keywords have also needed to change. So people don't necessarily just put divorce lawyer near me anymore. They ask more questions. So they would ask, who is the best divorce lawyer in my area? Or they might ask a question that actually is just related to divorce law. How hard is it to get divorced in Seattle? And so those are the sorts of things that you need to have content on your site to be able to answer those questions, as opposed to just having words that are found by a system.
That's why so many older law firm, not older, but like law firm websites from 5 to 7 years ago, they read really weird.
Yes,
right?
They're kind of clunky.
Yeah, they're very like you read it and you're like, okay, this is grammatically correct English, but there's just something off about the language. And I think as someone in operations myself, this is always something that really frustrated me, because like you'd get the keyword, the copy back from your agency, and you're like, this this appears to be garbage to my untrained eye because it's stilted. It said, why should I say hire divorce lawyer, family law, Seattle near me? XYZ my firm. Why don't I just say my firm? And it's because we're trying to signal to the search engine what sort of law firm we are. And actually I have an adjacent question for you, because like a lot of attorneys reach out to us and they're like, what should I name my law firm? Right? What should I name my law firm? Should I put Seattle Family Law in the name, or should it be something more generic? Does it make a difference? Right? I think a lot of attorneys are sort of left wondering, should we make our services explicit in the name? Is there SEO or rankings value in that?
I mean, things are changing, but if you are literally starting from scratch, there is a benefit in doing it as much as anything, because it makes it very clear what your business sells. So there's a functional benefit to it just for new users. There is a benefit to it in terms of SEO, and certainly traditional SEO with keywords, because you can very naturally put the name of your business into your content. It's not going to be forced because it's what the name of your business is. So I would say that there was a natural advantage to being able to do that, in the same way that way back people used to try and call themselves like AAA plumbers, because they wanted to be right at the beginning of the phone book, so that when someone is searching. So people used to do that. So it's kind of a similar sentiment that, you want to try and position yourself. And if you can do that by having the name of what you do in your own brand name, then it certainly has some benefits, some advantages. But I wouldn't say it has the same advantages that it used to.
That reminds me of The Accountant. Have you seen that action movie?
I have.
It's an American. For those of you that don't know, it's an American action movie about a gentleman who's an accountant for criminals, and he has an accounting front that's publicly listed because he needs a business to use his CPA license, and it's called ZZZZ Accounting.
Yeah.
And his goal is basically to stay as far down the IRS's to-do list as possible. And I always think of that when I think of like the naming conventions, how that can be very funny and have a utility of a kind. Though hopefully it's not to evade authorities. So I think a common misconception that I want to start with is that, like, does branding mean you just have a nice logo? Right? Is that what we're working with in this year of our Lord 2025? What are your thoughts, Rebecca?
Well, I have a fairly long history in the brand world, and so I could probably talk about this for a while, and there are some great books about this.
Yeah.
So I mean, branding just as the very term itself really isn't about your logo at all. It's about how people perceive you and how people feel about you. So when we talk about brand, I think a lot of people assume that means the sort of literal definition of a brand as in a mark. However, that's not really how how anyone within the industry would consider that. You can absolutely call it your brand mark, and your logo is your brand mark, but brand itself is, it's a little bit harder to define in that it's how people perceive you, what they think about you. So when you're not in the room, basically, what do they think about? If we were to say your brand to them.
Can I propose a definition to you? This is a homebrew definition that I've always gone with. I think I've always thought of brand and brand equity as the value of promises kept applied over time. Right?
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So people think like branding is about your color palette, and that's true. Like the emotions your logo and branding evokes is important, but what makes it valuable is your ability to make and keep promises and keep making them over a sustained period. And the longer you keep making them, the more valuable your brand equity. And then the audience may ask, well, what the hell value is that to me and my shareholders? Why does that matter as a law firm? It's because your brand equity can be measured in how much farther above market you can charge for your services.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And so people are always asked, like, what's the ROI on a good YouTube channel? And they try and trace the ad revenue or the leads they get direct, and that's the wrong metric. The metric you should apply is how much farther above your competitors' prices can you charge across your entire casebook originated from the YouTube channel or not, right?
Yep.
That's why Hemet Law, we charge an average of, depending on the attorney, somewhere between 25 and 47% above market, because our brand presence is so strong and people come to us because they trust us, because we've promised to represent people over time. We promised to keep those promises, and we've promised to like make things right if we ever make mistakes, which we are human, which we do, right? And that pays off in the long run, not in an abstract virtue signaling sense, but like in real monetary returns. Like clients are happy to work with us. And I think that's why I always pitch to like when I'm consulting with attorneys who want me to talk about like their internal operations, I'm like, what promises can you keep with this change? What issue are you trying to solve?
And that's, I mean, that what you've just said there, because my definition of it for consistent branding is delivering on the promises you have implied. Yep. So if your brand has said, and it might be that your brand has actually said, I will be the lowest priced competitor at this quality, but if you deliver on that, then you will still have a strong brand. If you are saying that I will make sure that you have the most efficient experience working with me, and if you deliver on that, then that's going to become a strong brand. And that's where the equity really comes in. So I think it's about being consistent. So a consistent tone across your platforms, consistent messaging, visually consistent is very advantageous. But really sort of being cohesive and consistent across your different social platforms, your website, any kind of touch point. And that also applies to the behavior of staff. I think this is a really interesting one.
Tell me more about that.
So we used to, at a brand agency I used to work for, we would often actually work with clients when we were coming up with their whole brand identity. A chunk of that would actually be about internal sort of staff engagement, internal handbooks, and talking about making sure that you are living up to the brand expectations. So if everything that you put out on your website and your social media is about being matter of fact, and about being honest and about being empathetic, and then someone calls up and they're asking questions and you give vague answers, you're perhaps not showing a lot of patience and empathy.
It's
then
the follow-through.
It's exactly that. It's the follow-through, and people then start to lose trust, because if you've promised something in one way or another and then the actual experience doesn't deliver on that, then you've immediately broken the trust that they have in your brand, and that's going to impact your brand equity. So I would say with any kind of brand identity that you do, and I do actually think it's important for all companies to do that, to say, who are we to other people? What do we want to stand for?
And I think there's something called goodwill, which this is accounting. We don't have to get into this. I know, like, I mention accounting and everyone flees the room. But accounting, goodwill in accounting is the delta of the purchase price of a company compared to the book value of all of its assets. Right? It's the intangible delta between what the market will pay for a business and what like the numbers justify objectively. Now, in case you did not know, purchasing businesses is not an objective or rational exercise, which is why goodwill has to exist. But if you are interested in a law firm exit, like I think a scourge of the legal industry is zero value exits, right? You get to the end of your career, you say, great, I've got this Google profile that's like mediation attorneys or in Portland or something like that. You've got a sterling presence in the community from an SEO perspective. And then you go, well, I'm 70 now, so I guess I'm just going to shut down the whole account and, dust my hands of it, and that's it. Too bad I couldn't have sold this to, another office somewhere. And I think that's such a tragedy because in the legal field, we don't consider our businesses, we consider them practices.
Yes.
And practices just vanish the moment the practitioner is gone. Right? There's no value in a practice because it relies on the presence of the shareholders, and you can't, if you retire, then like the whole value of the business vanished. Right. And so we consider equity to be a direct function of like how much you can monthly bill instead of how much value you can build over time. And I think that's a wasted opportunity. All right, Rebecca, advertising is too expensive for small firms. What are your thoughts? I have strong thoughts on Google local service ads, but I'd love to hear your input.
Well, so I was going to talk about LSAs, so Google local service ads, which were introduced a few years ago, and at the time when they were introduced, not many people knew about them. So definitely more people are using them now. So when law firms talk about advertising being too expensive, I do understand the argument against it because you can end up spending quite a lot of money and not necessarily really being able to see the results. And that's why a lot of people like local service ads. So it's something that Google put out so that you only appeared for very relevant searches and you only paid if someone called your firm and spoke to you for 30 seconds. Now, they used to, when they first started, they would also have a refund process where you could challenge and say, well, I've listened to that call, and actually I would say that's not a valid lead.
Not a lead. Or if the call is less than 30 seconds.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
So they have changed that. So they now use, I would imagine that they had a fair few that were contested.
Google makes more money? No way.
Shocking, right? I know, such a surprise. Such a surprise. I suppose it fulfilled the function at the time of lowering the barrier to entry. And now that the barrier to entry doesn't seem to be as much of an issue, they've taken away some of the good stuff. Understandable. But what I would say with LSAs is you don't pay unless someone actually calls you. And the likelihood is if they've called you and that they've gone through a very specific set of search terms. So, for example, if you are a criminal defense attorney, and they have looked for a criminal defense attorney in your area because it's very localized, then your ad comes up above what we used to call the local map. So it would come up above the maps, and it would say that you had been Google screened because you do have to show them your certification. You do have to provide licenses. So they know that you're verified, and you would come up above the map, which means that you're pushed a little bit higher than those people that are ranked more highly in the local area. So it was actually a very successful introduction, and I still think it is an extremely cost-effective way because you can track and really see the leads that you're getting, where they come from. You can make sure that you are only paying for people that actually call you, so they are about as qualified a lead as you're going to get if they are ringing you because they have put in a particular search term, and it is quite competitively priced. So for law firms, there's a big variance in price, so it's between $50 and about $350. It
depending
really
on your
vary.
Practice area and
your
metropolitan region.
That's exactly right.
It's bidding.
That's exactly right. So we have law firms, for example, in LA criminal defense.
Oh, God.
That is very pricey.
Yep.
So that is pricey per lead. That being said, if each of those leads that comes through is a high chance of conversion, then $340 per converted lead is pretty good. So I do think that is definitely an option. I think the real problem is if you are running ads where you don't have enough data to recognize what's doing well and what's not, and to capture the leads that you have to understand where they're coming from. So it's wasted cost for me is more of a problem than spend.
Sponsored by LegalRev, the marketing partner built for law firms. From local SEO to paid ads and AI search optimization, we help lawyers stand out where clients are searching. Stop guessing about your marketing ROI and start growing your caseload with proven strategies that work. Visit LegalRev.com.
I think my opinions on Google local service
Yeah.
ads. So we actually jumped on the LSA wagon a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was, and we made so. Google local service ads has an integration with Clio Grow, which we used to use at that time. We were transitioning to HubSpot for our intake systems. More on that later. But Google local service ads announced an integration with Clio. You can run LSA ads directly from your Clio interface, which is very cool. We're huge proponents of the Clio ecosystem, and we were beta testers. So the market had not yet been saturated. We were invited. We do a lot of product testing for the Clio team. We were invited to test. We made a ton of money. A ton of money. We had like, it was like something ludicrous, like a 15x multiple of spend to return on revenue, which is much better than pay-per-click ads. It was fantastic. Problem is, the beta ended, and now local service ads were put into the hands of thousands of more law offices in our area. And remember, this is a bidding marketplace.
Yes, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And it immediately became way harder to make the money we needed. More importantly, on the second item that I think we haven't been discussed enough in the zeitgeist, is that it's just not reliable what type of lead you're going to get, right? It's like Google LSAs are like a fighter jet with 4 buttons, right? You just can't pilot it like you could if you had the full control suite, and that's what normal PPC ads are. So I've always thought that like an income stream for a business that is more expensive per unit but more predictable about the type of lead you're going to get is more useful to me as a business manager than something quote unquote cheaper, but that's like throwing darts while blindfolded on a horse, right? Like sure, the phone's going to ring, but you don't know if the divorce is going to be tiny. You don't know if the divorce is going to be huge. You don't know if the if it's going to be a felony matter, if it's going to be white collar, whether or not it's going to be breaking and entering or murder, or the estate's going to be huge, or if it's going to be tiny. And so what happens is it puts law firms in a position where they have to service anything that comes to the door, even if it's technically within their practice area. There's a ton of variance in the type of clients you get, right?
Yes.
And so a good agency can go into your Google pay-per-click ad, which is the traditional Google revenue model that Hammett Law uses and nothing else, and say, okay, we want these geographies and these areas and these higher income neighborhoods, and we want to target at this time when they're looking at this stuff, or like there's way more optimization, right? And so
that's exactly right.
Way more optimization, and it's a scalpel, not a hammer. Does Google still take us for a ride, and are things getting slowly more expensive over time? Yes, but that's true across the entire Google ecosystem. Like, rest assured, we are working on that by trying to get into other areas of effective advertising. But I don't like LSAs because it puts law firms in a position where they cannot optimize over the long term, they cannot plan over the long term, and that means they can't grow. And so every time a marketer is talking about LSAs, it's because they're focusing on the per unit price and nothing else. And I just think it misses the bus in such a huge way, because that's why we've been able to grow so fast. Like, so what if we know our leads cost $500 per? If they're high conversion and they're a specific multimillionaire, we're going to get our money back for that. Who knows what sort of divorce will walk through the door from an LSA?
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. For a business that wants to scale, I don't think LSAs are at all appropriate, because you're totally right. You can't optimize. You don't really get enough data from it to optimize anyway, but there aren't many options to optimize. You can very much narrow down areas, but beyond that, and setting yourself a budget and saying, I only want to spend this much, there's not a lot you can do to actually optimize in areas. And that's exactly why Google Ads, for a lot of firms, is a better option, especially if they want to scale, because you can actually measure patterns. You can identify where perhaps your most appropriate leads are coming from. If you know that your highest converting leads are all perhaps coming from a particular time, so ads that you run between, say, 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. in a particular area, that most of those clients are ending up becoming signed clients as opposed to just a lead, then you might decide to deviate more of your budget to that area and try and maybe run some A/B tests. You might say, okay, well, these clients, we can see that we're getting more from this area. Perhaps we want to try some slightly different messaging and see if we can fine tune that even further to generate more leads. So there's definitely more options with Google to be able to do that. It's just that as a general rule, you need to spend more at the start to get more information and fine tune it. So there is a certain output at the beginning where you may get some very good leads, but at the start, the leads are going to come more from perhaps intuition from the marketing team. So making sure that we are putting out things which have, yes, they have keywords, they have been optimized in the sense that we have an understanding of the levers that we know work with other practice areas and other law firms. So we may be able to make a very good start. But the best campaigns are the ones that have been running for a few months, because you've actually had the chance to test things, to tweak things, and then they're fine-tuned and they're ready to actually really ramp up.
I think you should, if you're a law firm owner listening to this, you should push your agency. Sorry, I should back up a little bit. The normal revenue model for an agency managing an ad campaign is percent of ad spend, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I think what is industry, like 20% average, 10, 15%, somewhere around there? Fill me in
for ad spend?
Yeah, of the fee. What's the industry average for the fee?
Probably about 10%, 5 to 10%.
Oh, 5%. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah,
all right, way better. See, I'm spreading misinformation constantly.
Well, it depends on the firm. I'm sure.
Yeah, true. Okay, well, but the point I'm trying to thrust at here is that like it's a percentage, right? It's a percentage.
Generally, it's a percentage, yeah.
Yeah, generally your percentage. For LSAs, that is not appropriate, in my opinion. Right, because that percentage is the amount is representative of the amount of optimization and A/B testing and fine tuning over time that your agency is putting in. LSAs, all they do is they change the bidding and the geography. Right, there's no work to be done to move that needle over time, and so you should ask them for a flat fee no matter the ad spend. That would be my argument, because there's no value for the agency to be like, if you're spending $100,000 on Google ads or Google LSAs, it's just as much work as if you were spending $10,000 for the agents from the agency's perspective. There's no amount of value add there. So I think it's absolutely appropriate to charge a percentage for PPC ad campaigns, for video ad campaigns on short form content platforms. I do not think I see too many agencies charging a percentage of ad spend on LSAs. I do not think it's appropriate or ethical.
I think that really pushing your agencies to what is appropriate for you in terms of, say, a split spend as well. So what we do with a lot of our clients is we might say to them, right, we're going to try this much budget on LSA and we're going to try this much budget on Google Ads, and let's compare and see the quality of the leads. So we try to have an overall budget for advertising and make sure that it fits the actual agent, the actual law firm itself, so that it's going to hopefully give them the best return on what they spend. So in that sense, we are sometimes optimizing their overall campaign in terms of adjusting where the spend goes, depending on what works best for them. Because as we mentioned before, some areas and some practice areas can end up becoming very expensive for LSAs, and we don't always find that out until we start running a campaign. You can't find out ahead of setting up a campaign on LSA how much it's going to cost. They do have on the Google website, they have some calculators, but they are often wildly inaccurate. We've found that out ourselves from doing it and trying to give an indication to a client and say, well, for your budget, you should be able to get, say, 10 leads a week. And then when we actually start running the campaign, it's very, very different. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, because the tools that Google puts out are designed to make Google more money.
Of course.
In one way or another. I mean, I almost can't blame them, but mileage may vary. And that brings us to our final misconception of the day: more traffic means more clients. Rebecca, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say definitely not true. So if you have a lot of traffic going to your site, that is a good start, obviously. You want to have traffic coming to your site. But as a general rule, most websites only convert 2 to 5% of the traffic that comes to their site. So obviously volume can be very important. You want to make sure you've got enough people there to get anyone to sign. But I would say that the problem is, if you've got a lot of people coming to your site, but your site is not optimized as an experience for conversion, then people are going to leave. If it's too slow, if perhaps it's not very clear how you're supposed to contact the law firm or what you're supposed to do when you get there, if your branding is really off-putting, if your website looks maybe that it hasn't had a lot of care taken with it, perhaps it looks a bit old-fashioned, perhaps it just looks clunky. I think all of those things can mean that you have put all this effort into getting someone to your site, either with SEO tactics or paid ads, and then they get there and you potentially lose a lead because of that first impression that they have. First impressions are hugely important. User experience is hugely important.
You only have one chance at a good first
You have this one chance.
Yeah.
And so the things that, can move the needle are making sure you've got clear calls to action, you've got a site that's responsive, or a site that's fast, and then obviously there's follow-up factors to that, making sure that perhaps if someone submits a form, they get an email back quickly so that they still remember you. There's another touch point there. But from that first point of actually getting the traffic there, if you're not capturing them immediately in one way or another, then that's a potential loss lead that's going to a competitor. So traffic itself is obviously necessary to get people there, but it's far better if you had 1,000 people that come to your site in a week, but only 10 people call you, or you have 100 people that come to your site and 20 people call you. Ultimately, your end game is to make sure that you get signed clients. If you are having lots of people come there and doing nothing, you have to question why.
My input as an ancillary issue is, like, I hear from law firm owners a lot, like, oh my God, I run a criminal defense attorney, I have a criminal defense practice and I'm getting all these divorce calls, right? Common problem, heard all the time, and they talk about how much they hate it. They're like, how people are calling me for problems that I don't solve, and it gums up our traffic. It gums up our receptionists. We can't get to the people who really want to hire us. This is awful. And I think that is a problem, and that needs to be diagnosed. Sure. Don't get me wrong. But I also want to emphasize, I tell my intake team, don't get frustrated. If people are calling you for their problems, that is an indicator of brand trust.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe there's some consumer confusion along the way, but you should not be discouraged that people are asking you to solve your problems. You should take their problems seriously, even if you can't help them. And so we have a designated list of people to refer you to. Like, our number one goal of our intake and customer care team is never turn someone away from the phone without some sort of actionable solution or next step, right? And we never want to say, sorry, can't help you.
Yeah.
Hang up the phone, right? We always send someone in another direction, apologize, we can't be more assistance. And so we maintain that visibility, because everyone, for us, everyone eventually has a divorce or knows someone who will have one.
Yes, sure.
Right? And I think negative, like word of mouth, goes both ways. Everyone always talks about word of mouth like it's positive, but you can have negative word of mouth and it's unseen, untracked, and I would argue far more damaging in the long run.
Far more damaging, yeah.
Far more damaging. And so I would say, like, just like keep in mind that, like, people calling you for any reason, I wouldn't say is immediately a terrible thing. I think it's indicative of something working, even if it's not the thing you intended.
Yeah. I also think that someone calling you and maybe asking you about a different practice area, every contact that you get is information of a sort, and it may actually indicate that there's something that needs fixing. So from an SEO agency point of view, if we had a lawyer contacting us and saying, I've had 5 calls that are asking for a different practice area, or they are expecting us to be open on a day that we're not, that to me is an indication that there is some information out there on the internet or on their site that is probably not doing them a good service. So whether it's incorrect or ambiguous, that's an opportunity, I would say, to be able to do something about it.
Rebecca, I think this has been a fantastic discussion today. What are some practical final takeaways to those listeners in the audience? What value can you deliver to us on our closing remarks?
My final thought is probably, because I'm still thinking about that last point around traffic and websites, is if you haven't had a look at your website for a while, I would suggest asking someone that you know and trust to go on as an end user and give you some honest feedback of what it actually feels like to go onto your website. I think we often get a little bit blinded when it's our own site and our own brand to the opportunities that are out there to improve it. And so suggest that, you ask maybe even a few people that will be honest with you for their real feedback. Is it difficult to use? Was it slow to use? Was it a bad mobile experience? Was it really clear about how they could make an appointment with you or contact you, and just review it with a very objective, fresh set of eyes to see if there are ways that you can improve it to convert more of that traffic into actual leads.
Absolutely. I think for my takeaways for today, branding is a value add, right? And that the big average is a fallacy in some instances, right? If you take your marketing budget, divide my revenue, get some sort of ratio, and then say that, like, oh, that's it. That's our marketing average. That's a short-term way of looking at it. Brand equity is not measured in your quarterly or yearly spend. It's measured in how much farther above market clients will happily pay to work with your team, right? If you're above market, you've got great brand equity. If you're below market, you're underwater. My recommendation is you can go to Clio. Clio has a market average calculator for across practice areas and geographies across the whole country. You can get a sense of where your team is at, and then you can let your decisions guide you from there. But thank you, everyone. This has been Firm Factor. We will be back next week. Thank you so much for joining us.